I don't know whether that was chosen because I have never seen a better looking bunch of saints in my life, or whether there's a little bit of toe tapping going on there, and I'm sure that there is. Welcome this day to a farewell for a lady that has lived long and well in this world. And today, as we begin a new year, we say farewell to her. My name is Lindley McKerrow, and it's my absolute privilege to be here this day. And you gather to farewell that lady that has made a huge contribution in different forms to a lot of areas in Invercargill. Moureen Hartley, née Liddell, passed peacefully on Friday, the 27th of December. She was at Vickery Court Rest Home. Moureen is the loved wife of the late Lloyd, and she is sadly missed by her most loving family, Pamela and Alan, Wayne and Lois, Shelley and Terry, and also mourned by her grandchildren. Her grandchildren, Melissa and Matthew, Cameron, Jamie and Melissa, Aaron and Bevan and Paul, Mike and Lucy, and the great-grandmother of Sasha, Ryan, Ray, and Aidan and Blake. Now, it says in the Word of God that one should have a quiver full of arrows. I don't know whether she started off with a quiver full, but certainly it looks like down the generations it's happening. Now, there are some people that cannot be here in person today, and we think particularly of grandchildren who came earlier in the Christmas period, a week earlier, and celebrated Christmas with Moureen. Now we're going to Michael's going to come as our most distant traveller today, and he's going to light the candle in remembrance of those people that cannot be here. Thank you. Wonderful, thank you. So we think of those people, and we remember, and we also have, though, via the wonderful way of streaming, people that are here, although we cannot see them, they can definitely see us. So we welcome those who are maybe watching at the moment or who may watch later on. So they are very much included in our service today, and I hope that they sing the songs that we're going to sing as well. Over the last few days of her life, Moureen was never alone. All of those last moments of the journey of Maureen's life were shared with her by her children and family, and it wasn't an easy time for them as they sat and they watched a talented and loving lady give up her life. Their mum and grandmother slipped this mortal coil, but not, I think, without a struggle at times. As well as being, though, that wonderful mum and mother-in-law and grandmother, Moureen was, of course, a loved family member of her wider family, a great friend and a fellow performer in some instances, and a colleague as well. So as we are gathered here today, there was some wonderful music. Thank you, Joe. And I'm sure that Moureen would have enjoyed it immensely. And there was an awful lot of toe tapping, I could see that. And none of you, I see, burst into song, though. Obviously not. But we celebrate a life and a love of Moureen. And at the same time, there is grief at her physical going. But we cannot say goodbye without remembering all that Moureen has left in this world. The generations, there are 3 to be exact, of course. Moureen had children, and there was grandchildren, and now great-great-grandchildren. And there's also memories, and all of you will possess some sort of a memory, whether it was dancing with her wherever she was, or whether it was performing with her, or even perhaps being her student. Many memories that you will all possess here today, and these are the reason for celebration. Within this service, there are going to be things remembered, and then they're going to leave here and share refreshments. And again, there's that opportunity to share your memories, your time spent with Moureen, and those wonderful moments. And of course, there are those remember when moments that you will share down the years as you sit and perhaps have a cup of tea or something a little stronger, perhaps. And we remember Moureen. But we take a moment here to give thanks for the life and the love of Moureen and ask too a blessing on this gathering. So let's take a moment of prayer. Lord, precious in your sight are your children. We have not the insight to know all that final journey of a loved one involves, but you do. At this moment we come before you, Lord, to give thanks as we carefully place Maureen's hand into your hand, the hand of the God of creation. Thank you for all that Moureen was to so many, and thank you particularly for all she was to her family. Thank you, Lord, that she left behind this wonderful sense of family, of the love and of being with one another at this time. We would ask a blessing on those whose lives have changed because of Maureen's passing. The routines will no longer be the same. May those moments in time, which come unexpectedly at times, be gentle as they farewell their mum and grandmother, this family member and friend. But we can but marvel at life at this time, Lord. Marvel at your work as we think of all that Moureen did in her life, what she has left and the memories that will continue on in the generations over the years. Bless this family, we ask, as they continue their journey, knowing that all the promises in your word come true, that you will never leave us nor forsake us, that you, Holy Spirit, are the comforter and will always be. And when we take time to listen, we will hear your comforting voice. We will remember Moureen and her love. This prayer we pray in both gratitude and in thanks. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen. Now we're going to stand together and sing. I can't do everything today, and I know that there are an awful lot of wonderful voices out there. So I make the point I was called to the pulpit, not to the choir stalls. So ladies and gentlemen, you all need to sing up, and I know Joe plays so beautifully and loudly when I sing. But the love of giving oneself into God's hands, the God that knows all and what happens in our life. And this song portrays much of that. So we give ourselves to God and we sing the thanks of knowing that we can. So ladies and gentlemen, please stand as we sing together. There's not a church minister in this city that wouldn't be envious of the sound that's just been heard. Thank you so much. It's beautiful. But the heart of the farewell is here, and here we remember some of the things that Moureen and perhaps that she did, and perhaps some of the things that people don't know of her, but most of you know a great deal about her. And I'm going to give a brief overview, and yes, it will have to be brief. And it's not at a time like this what you put into a service, it's what you leave out. And sadly, the things we leave out are as pertinent and as beautiful and as talented as what we're going to put in. When I've finished the overview, family are going to come and they're going to pay their wonderful tributes, and then it will be your turn, should you wish. You can come and share a moment that you may have shared with Moureen here, or you can do it as you share refreshments. But I got most of Maureen's story from a booklet that was written about her and by her own telling at her 50 years of teaching reunion in 1993. And so this, or most of what I say, is an older story. The more up-to-date parts will be the part that you will share here with each other. Moureen had a most interesting and certainly a very, very varied life. Her adoptive mother, Anne Liddell, was for many years a teacher of speech and dancing. That gave Moureen the opportunity to learn dancing, singing and violin. She learned through her years from many of the prominent teachers here in Invercargill. Maureen's debut was made with Reen Ward, a ballet teacher. She asked her mother if she would perform some acrobatics in a concert she was having, and this was when Moureen was only 3.5. So she began at a very, very young age. While learning Highland dancing, she was also learning the violin, reciting and singing, which she performed at competitions. Moureen was awarded a cup for the violin for special bowing as she was 6 and in the under 16 section. So she's been born a great talent. A man from the broadcasting approached Maureen's mum and asked if they could record her voice, and she still has the record in her possession. As a matter of fact, I was interested to note that the record you do have of her is played from the inside out, not the outside of the record in. So it has got some dates on it there a wee while ago. But during the 7 years of playing violin, she won many prizes and passed many exams, and she finished playing the violin when she was 13. Her singing was a different matter entirely. She loved it, and had a number of very fine Invercargill teachers. She sang in competitions right up to the age of 16 and under 18 section. She travelled each year to different places to compete and was really successful, but had to give it up. And I find this is a very interesting thing. She was using her voice so energetically at her dancing pupils, so she had to give up singing. So all of you singers, when you admonish your children, don't do so quite so energetically. When she was 10, Maureen's mother enrolled her with a Highland dance teacher, and this time she applied herself and was much more interested in the serious about all things that were required to become a dancer. So she became very serious about that. She received a prize for diligence, and this encouraged her further. And over the years, she did extremely well and won quite a few prizes. Her school years were fairly happy, although being a boarder at St Catherine's for 8 years, she was only allowed home 1 weekend a month, and she did get very, very homesick. In her 9th year, she became a day pupil. However, her mother and the Mother Superior had a disagreement over an exam that she was sitting, and that was the end of her school and the end of her secondary education. Remember, she was only in her 9th year. At 13, Moureen left and sat the Trinity College of London ATCL in elocution, supposedly being the youngest candidate in New Zealand at the time. She passed and decided it was her forte in life to teach. She was always passionately fond of children and helped her mother, who had numerous speech pupils. Her mother travelled around Southland teaching what was called elocution in those days, and she taught for 52 years. Moureen herself went on to teach, and her very first pupil was Sylvia Boniface, who was taught in the garage at 179 Crinan Street. While teaching a number of pupils, Moureen was studying for another elocution exam at the Licentiate Trinity College in London. She had to travel to Dunedin every fortnight to learn from Mr. Walter Russell Ward. She was very particular about what she wrote, actually, in this lovely dissertation. And there was the tap dancing and the ballet lessons as well. She says there was never a dull moment or a moment to spare. Moureen was 15, and at that age she was teaching from the garage from her home, in people's homes, plus the Mitchell Street Kindergarten, and her numbers grew immensely. It was then she hired the rooms above the Para Rubber Company, described by Moureen as a dirty old building, but the rent was quite reasonable, so she was philosophical about it. She had now taught Highland dancing in many country districts in Southland, in Winton and in Gore, and those being the main centres where she taught, and then she was married. So she taught it until she was married, and when Moureen was about 18, her class really developed, so it was then she decided to have a review. Her first review was called Storyland, and there are a few of you out there, I'm sure, that remember it, because I can see some nodding. And where the characters appeared out of the pages of the storybook. Her second was called the Sunshine Review. Pantomimes were Babes in the Woods, and the most popular pantomime, of course, was The Old Woman Who Lived in the Shoe. With 165 children participating. Isn't that wonderful? And the part of the old woman was taken by Moureen herself. The show was produced in 1950 and proved to be so popular that she was asked to repeat it in 1951. And that lovely sentence that she wrote, "However, it went well and was a fantastic success." In 1951, Moureen and her mother and father went to Sydney for a holiday for 3 months, and it was in Sydney that she paid a Miss Mercia George of the Tivoli Theatre in Sydney 2 guineas a lesson. Now, there are a few of us still here today that remember what a guinea is, and it was a lot of money. When she returned from her stay in Sydney, she launched straight into the production of The Old Woman in the Shoe, and at the end of the year married Lloyd Hartley. Her words, and thanks to his great support and help, I was able to carry on with my teaching, but sadly Lloyd passed away some 23 years ago. In 1953, Pamela Ann was born. Her pupils were most generous, and Pamela must have had the most extensive wardrobe of any child in Invercargill. We can imagine the frills and the bows, actually, Pamela. And there were the students, of course, were all interested in Pamela's progress. They were following the first teeth and the talking and the walking with great expectation. In 1957, Moureen produced the show Dick Whittington, and Pamela had 2 items. During the chicken dance, I think this is where the expression "chook with its head chopped off" came from. During the chicken dance, Pamela was overcome with the bigness of the stage, the lights, and possibly the audience, and spent time running around the stage, looking for the exit behind the huge stage inn. Most embarrassingly for me, writes Moureen, but the audience loved it. And she writes so beautifully here, in fact, no teacher's life would be complete without those moments. Isn't that wonderful? In 1956, Wayne arrived, not suited for the stage, but he was a real sportsman, so the competitive streak was still alive and well. I think there's a little bit of theatre goes on with him at the moment, though. In 1961, Maureen's pupils were involved in a grand recital at the Civic Theatre. Around 1965, she had to slow down with her teaching as she had an operation for bunions and hammer toes. According to Moureen, the dancer's curse, it was called. Her recovery was painful, and in 1965, after a maternal break of 9 years, Shelley Marie was born. After Shelley was born, Maureen's health was not very good, and she had to take things slowly, taking only a small number of speech pupils. Moureen joined Weight Watchers after seeing herself in photos at Pamela's wedding in 1972 and decided she needed to slim down. She attended the meetings about 3 times and then was asked to take over. Such was the lady. Isn't that wonderful? And again, Maureen's words, I was thrilled and enjoyed every moment of those classes, especially as they helped to keep me trim. She took these classes for many years, going from large to a larger hall as the numbers grew. That's halls, not people. This went on for approximately 2 decades, and after the 1993 reunion, she went on to teach dance to a few mature students, women who wanted to revive their tapping skills. And have we got any revivalists here of their tapping skills? It was great fun for them all, and the people enjoyed many lively performances. But all these memories are, as I said, from some time ago, and Moureen lived an amazing life. an amazing life, one that contributed to some of the great entertainment here in Southland. She was justifiably proud of her achievements, but she was never arrogant. She was always very humble about what she did, because it came so naturally to she who did this so beautifully. She was quite self-effacing in most ways, but her love of being part of the choir, enjoying her garden, the people she met, her exercise and dance, probus, and again I say choir because that's what she really, really loved, and along with her grandchildren, of course. And oh, there is also somewhere in there a mention of her cooking skills. So she was a wonderful cook. Moureen found her biological mother when she was 40, but spent many years wondering about her biological father. It was her one regret that she didn't know anything about him until about 6 years ago, when her granddaughter Melissa found the family through Ancestry.com. The family travelled to Australia to meet them, and the puzzle was complete. It was a wonderful reunion with long-lost family, and her nephew and his son have travelled to be with us today, all the way from Sydney. You are such a welcome addition to this gathering. And so now there are children. There are grand and great-grandchildren, and this is the legacy that Moureen has left, her children of whom she is justifiably so proud, and they all have their own talents. And of all the people that she taught over the years who gave her that wonderful sense of belonging, they've gone on to teach or to perform, or whose lives she has just enhanced. This was who Moureen was. She enhanced so many, many lives. But who better to pay tribute to her than those who loved her most and knew her best? And that's her family and close friends. And after they have spoken, there is going to be an invitation, should you wish to come and share a brief memory or two. And I know there's a million of them out there. So Pamela's going to start this day with some of her wonderful memories of her mum. There's a great elegance about this family, and I think it was put into you by your marvellous mother. Come on up.
Okay, well, Amazing Grace just about finished me off, I'm sorry. But I think Mum always loved a laugh. And Dad used to say, if you haven't got a laugh, you haven't got a lot. So in 2005, Mum came up to Auckland and we had a huge family reunion. Didn't know the Owenses at that stage, but I wrote a poem for her. And it was an encapsulation of her life at that stage. Are you coming with me? Yeah, you come with me. Okay, good. Okay, so, Moureen. Oh, it's good. We're all here. Okay, so, early in the morning, before the sun is up, Mum is up, about and heading for her teacup. You just never know who will call in today. Mum welcomes the world each and every day. She has endless enthusiasm for what she can find out about others. She's one of a kind. Up and out on her pins, her feet aren't the best. But it's all very well for others to rest. Look for the best. You will find it, I'm sure. She means well, as the critique after the door has closed behind someone who was rash enough to impose their extremely rough point of view. Not quite right, but never mind, Mum. Recipes from Moureen are a gift from afar. You're never quite sure what the end results are. The ingredients are there, and sometimes the instructions, but it's not quite the same. You can't put her love in. With Bernie in tow, she's at all social functions. They dance and they foxtrot, cause absolute ructions. With neighbours and friends, his car is most evident. So it's parked up the back, and that's quite an achievement. It's all go at mornies, they're in and they're out, but lunch is something they're never without. Bernie can cook. He's an Epicurean whiz. He's even trained Moureen to sit on her fizz. While eating with Moureen, it used to be drama. And now we all know it is such a lot calmer. But strange and bizarre. I mean, after all, If you wanted the sauce, you just had to call. Life is such a challenge with all of her friends. Can you come for a ride? The fun never ends. There's even a passport for travelling afar, but Gore and Dunedin can get there by car. It's quite an achievement without a licence. Why, I'm sure I could drive. Well, that is just nonsense. We all know you're capable, but you're blind as a bat. And that, dear Moureen, is that. The ladies from Probus meet once every month. The prominent feature, the aftermatch lunch. There's value and taste in close competition, and take into account the state of the kitchen. Grandchildren now are her pride and joy, and all of them brilliant to the very last boy. But there's only one granddaughter, and she's clever too. It's amazing what line of descent will come through. Okay, our mum is the best. She is one of a kind. You can bet she will know just what's on her mind. From mountains to molehills, she's got an opinion. When she's holding court, she is always the kingpin. A life well lived, with friends, food and love. Maureen's life fits like a glove. She's a prize, a joy, a delight to her friends. From her family, we hope the love never ends. Okay.
You did good.
Good. Okay, so you're going to do this?
Do you want to do
I haven't done this since 5 and it didn't go very well.
I'm here, we're here. Here.
So anyway, we'll have a go. Oh dear. Right.
Okay.
Right. Mum loved people. She loved them achieving to their ability and helping them achieve, and I'm always proud of their achievements. Over the later years, I would encourage Mum to recite and visit the rest homes, where a lot of her mates were. And if Mum was feeling down, by the time she left, she would be doing a bit of a tap dance and would be on top note, knowing she was escaping the rest home while the rest were still locked in. That was Mum. Mum was known as the merriest of Grace Street, so when the street barbecue was on, she had to attend. With Mum's teaching, she had hundreds of friends, former pupils, and their kids visiting over the years, which Mum loved. There was never a dull moment when growing up in Grace Street. Mum was always organising us and everybody else. I've met some amazing people with Mum and enjoyed the banter. Funnier things in Mum's life, getting a car licence. During a driving lesson in 1969, with Dad as the instructor, and Pam and myself in the back seat, while driving a Ford 10, she decided at the bottom of Dalrymple and Bluff Road that she didn't need the steering wheel. So let both hands go, and Dad grabbed the steering wheel and we did a 360 and stopped in the middle. So that was the end of the driving lesson for a while.
Had another 20 years.
Yeah. So anyway, she didn't attempt a driving licence for another 24 years. So Dad had been a bit nervous and decided to part with some coin and got his mate Beckley to give Mum 22 driving lessons. And Dad said, thinking about his wallet getting a bit light, don't you think it's about time, Bex, that Moureen got her licence? So in the lead up to Mum's driving test, Mum would go for a drive on her own and practice in a farmer's paddock. But the only trouble is she couldn't get back out of the paddock. So about 3 hours later she'd arrive. And anyway, so getting out of the paddock, so we've done that. So the day finally arrives for Mum to go for a driver's licence, and Dad and myself look at each other. Oh, she's got no chance of that. So anyway, she arrives home and she's got the licence. So a week later, she goes to the Weight Watchers up in, I think it was Stewart Street, and she took about an hour later getting home. We were doing the fence at home, and I said, well, that's it. She's had an accident. And Mum decided that, we're mighty tenors, that she had a green arrow, but there wasn't one invented, so she turned right and the lady coming through collected her, and the young married lady gave her a few words, but Mum got the traffic officer, charmed him, and that basically was the end of it. So she returned, that was the end of the driving. So.
Avocado's safer.
Yeah, so that was about it. So yeah, I don't know if I've got much else or not, but yeah, that's enough anyway. So yeah, so I'll just leave it at that. But over the years, we've just enjoyed all the friends and everything, and I've met that many of them. I used to sort of hide. I'd be gone. So thanks.
I've been asked to mention the Verse Boys,
Thanks.
that Russell and Ellen can't be here, but they're with us in spirit. And Mum's last speech pupil, Deborah Webb, who's now Deborah Small, can't be here today, but she was very fond of Mum and asked me to read her speech. So it's entitled Moureen. In 1977, I was 4 years old when I first met Moureen, or Mrs. Hartley, as I called her back then. There had been a long association with the Hartleys. My grandparents, Beulah and Harry Webb, were friends of Moureen and Lloyd's. Moureen had taught speech to Peter, Susan and Paul. Now Nicola, my older sister, was learning, and as I watched and listened, I couldn't keep still. I was itching to take part too. Moureen was a little unsure if I was ready, but in her generous and kind way, she said I could start. Little did I know back then that it would be the beginning of a 42-year friendship and learning that would ultimately change my life. As you know, Moureen had an absolutely beautiful voice, and when she read a poem or played a character, you were immediately transported to that place and time. She could lift the words off the page and give it meaning, intended by the author. But what made her even more special was the way in which she would share that skill and knowledge with others. At home in Grace Street every week for many, many years, Moureen would select poems and characters for us to perform in the Southland competitions or for Trinity College speech exams. She'd guide us with her years of experience and her insights as to how a piece should be performed. She encouraged us and she shared her knowledge and kindness. She instilled in me a love of words and language and prepared us so fully that we couldn't help but do well. I remember thinking at the time that we had the best teacher in New Zealand, and I truly believe that we did. Maureen would be there for every performance, and after exams she'd be on the phone wanting to hear all the details about the examiner and how we'd done. Then, when the results arrived at her house, she'd pass on the news so proudly as if we had not done well as we'd had hoped, then she'd make us feel better and start talking about what we could do next year. She always lifted us up. In later years, we'd visit Grace Street and we'd always be met with the biggest smile and hug. She was interested in all we'd been up to, and then she'd proudly tell us all about her own projects and how well Pam, Wayne and Shelley and their families were doing. When Simon and I moved back from London after 15 years, with children Henry aged 4 and Charlotte aged 2, it was probably too much to expect Moureen could help another generation of Webbs. How wrong could we be? Moureen took an immediate liking to Henry and commented that he was just like me. He couldn't sit still either. Yet she worked her magic, and although we were 2 hours up the road, we'd always try and have a session with Moureen before the exam. And it was amazing to see her in her late 80s and early 90s, still enthusiastic, still wanting to help and offer her advice, which was always still spot on. We would always let her know how they'd done, and she would be proud as punch to see them do well. Moureen visited us in Queenstown, and she would help Henry and Charlotte with some tongue twisters and poems, and she did not miss a beat. She was able to get a very busy little boy to calm down long enough to listen, and she was able to get a shy little girl to express herself. Moureen had not lost her touch after all those years, and they loved her. We were lucky enough to visit Moureen 2 weeks ago, and although she was starting to slow down, what a visit. She was so delighted to see us all, especially Henry and Charlotte, and she handed out the chocolates, hugs and kisses. The conversation was upbeat and as interesting as ever, with her commenting on Henry's improving impediment. Maureen, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you for the gift of your teaching. Thank you for your kindness, enthusiasm, and especially your love. Your knowledge lives on in all of your students, and your memory will be with us forever. We love you, we promise we'll keep practicing, we'll slow down, we'll sound our T's and our D's properly, and we'll think of you often. May you be at peace now. That's from Deborah. And Mum, I'd like to say that on the board out in the garage, there's somebody has written, "One more time, please." And I think that all her pupils were familiar and dreaded that one more time. But we don't have any more time with our Mum now. But we will always hold her very dear in our hearts, and we've got love and laughter and very fond memories.
And friends.
And friends, thank you all.
And it was Washington Irving that said, "Tears are not a sign of weakness, but a sign of great strength, and speak more eloquently than 10,000 words. They're a sign of great love, and the love that you have for your mother is so very, very obvious, and your grandmother as well." Now, before I extend the invitation I spoke of earlier, are there any other family, just family, that would like to come? No? Nobody else? That's fine. Thank you. So that invitation I did speak of earlier, we make here new memories in the light of Maureen's passing. And so today, perhaps you may have a short memory you would like to share with us, something that brought you into her life or she into your life. I know it's a very difficult to ask at this time, but is there anyone that has a memory? Remembering when we share together after the service that we can take that moment there. Come on up.
My name is Julie Moylan. I come from Winton. I was Julie Dixon when I learned music. I've learned dancing off Moureen. And that years would have been about 1949 to about 1954. I think the horseshoe, the old woman in the shoe, we were in that thing. And the highlight of the whole thing was, it was in the Civic Theatre, and we stayed for tea, and we had tea on the Civic Theatre stage, which was a big deal for us kids. But my abiding memories of Moureen at the RSA rooms in Winton, when, no wonder she was husky for singing, she always had a packet of throaties beside her. And as she could multitask, and her mother taught speech out in the kitchen at the RSA rooms. And this was, when you went into dancing, was, "Good morning, Miss Lauren," and it was the afternoon. She was diddly-dumming the whole time. Diddly-dum, take off your shoes, you are on next. How low hasn't she improved? Hurry up and change your gear. Diddly-dum, and never miss a beat. And at the end of the day, the voice was normally quite gone. And she had an influence on so many lives. I think all my generation that did learn dancing, and probably especially off Moureen, became great in the ballroom and the dancing. And a lot of the kids today don't have that. But her dancing was just, I was absolutely delighted. There was a photo of me with Moureen, just a few years ago. There was a woman's do it at the Ascot, and I was in real estate, and we had a separate one, and we met up. And it's a cracking photo. I might get it off one of the girls later sometime. But I did talk to her and ring her often about things and how times change. When she was having Pamela, I was in town with my mother. I must have been, 11, 12, whatever. And we were in this dress shop, and at the end of the thing, here was Miss Liddell, of course, Mrs. Hartley. And in quite a loud voice, I said, "Mum, there's Miss Liddell." And everybody turned around. She was about 8 months pregnant. But you see, I hadn't remembered her married name. And she had that great reunion at the Ascot Hotel, and it was the lunchtime, I think we got there after lunch, potluck, and we danced. We would come and be prepared to dance or whatever, and I thought, well, I'm not going to get up and dance. And when I got there, he was Bev Fraser from Winton, and the chickadee item with the chickadee hat on, and they were chickadee-dee and chickadee-dee. And then she finished that item, she said, all my tap dancing pupils, I was first up on the floor. We all danced, and Natalie Harper was it that played the piano, the Keep Fit. She was multitasking all her life. And then in later years, I had the privilege of hearing her in that wonderful choir when I was president of Probus in Winton. And she was in the front row, and she looked marvellous. And I guess a lot of them here today, that harmony was beautiful. We must get you back at Probus because it was so lovely. But anyway, people colour your life, and Moureen has certainly coloured mine and many, many people. My mother would be pleased I've got up here, and my grandmother too, because it's nice to share memories. We've all got different memories. Thank you.
Step on. Yep, right. You're right. Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Margaret Pascoe, and I belong to the choir Uniquely Us. And we had that lovely lady. She'd sit in the front row every time, and she would diddly-dum, diddly-dum. We were laughing over that. We thought that was rather good. She often had a poem. I don't think I'll be as good as you, but we'll have a go anyway. This is a poem for Moureen. We gather today to say goodbye to a beautiful soul, a lady called Moureen, so neat and dainty, as all of us know. A sense of humour and sassiness a delight to behold. Her teaching so memorable, her pupils will tell. Her feet so nimble, and her manner so sweet. This little lady would never miss a beat. The love and the joy she shared with us all is a blueprint for all of us to take on board. It would be testament to her if we can be as kind and gentle as she, and yet still be driven to be the very best we can be. A thespian too, her verses hit the mark. Not sure mine do, but there may be a spark, because dear Moureen could certainly inspire. With such grace and vitality, she could make us all smile. I'm sure she's been taken to sing in God's celestial choir, or to direct a great concert of performers on high. They say angels watch over us. Well, we can be sure dear Moureen has joined them. They will have opened the door. We will miss our dear friend, our hearts will be sad, but heaven will be brighter, filled with passion galore, for music and poems and steps on the floor. Still those dancing feet, still that busy mind. Goodbye, gracious lady, rest in peaceful sleep. Precious memories of you in our hearts we will keep. Thank you.
Maureen certainly had a song in her heart, didn't she? And I think it's a wonderful thing that other people have inherited it. Is there anybody else that has a story they'd like to tell? No? Come on in.
I'll say a few words from here. A wee small incident. We've had Moureen in our choir for 9 years, so I'm a new friend of Maureen's, but she was a lovely friend. But I must say, I had a birthday about 5 years ago, and she arrived. It was a dress up, and she was diddly-dum, dressed as Donald Duck. We were dressed up too, but she took the show. And I worked out later on that she was 86. So I think that was pretty good, and we've loved her in our
Nobody knew her. They didn't know who
Nobody,
she was.
nobody. And my family have never forgotten her, and I'm very sad when I told them all, my grandchildren have never forgotten Moureen the Donald Duck. She was so proud of that.
And she has left such a mark on the hearts of so many people, that gorgeous thumbprint. And I think we all need to try to do that in this world because, you know, joy is a great thing, and she has spread that joy to everyone, especially her family, but to you as well. So she'll never be forgotten in Invercargill. There's no, well, in Southland actually, there's no two ways about it. So as you dance and you skip and you Highland dance and you listen to the skirl of the pipes, just remember Moureen, and she loved every moment of it. We're going to stand now and sing again. Now, one of Maureen's great loves, of course, was definitely her lovely garden. And many of you here today will have sat in that garden, whether it was at a soiree or whether you were just visiting her. I really don't know when she had the time to garden or cook or do any of those things in that lovely, neat and tidy house the children were raised in. But it's a tribute to that love that we sing this song, and we stand together and sing together in the garden. Please stand, ladies. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please be seated. And I am sure that Moureen, when she was in her garden, enjoyed those quiet moments. But over the years, there have been many people who have travelled some part of Maureen's journey with her, friends for long-term or short. You have all contributed in many ways into hers and the family's lives. It will be difficult for family to get to each of you individually to give their thanks, and here I shall try and convey their gratitude. This is not the first thank you, and it certainly will not be the last. So to all of you here today, family and friends, you have taken time to be here to support family, to support each other, and to pay tribute to Maureen's memory. thank you so very much. To those who have travelled from far and from near, thank you. All of you are a most welcome addition to this day. To those who knew of Maureen's passing and have sent messages and other tributes to family members wherever they are in the country, thank you so very much. Such care is greatly appreciated. With routines changing and family getting used to being without an integral part of their lives, it may be a while for this journey to complete itself, but just hang in there with them. To all the staff at Vickery Court, thank you so very much for your wonderful care, not just for a much-loved family member, but for the family as well. Although Maureen's stay was not a long one, they are grateful that she was cared for and about at the end of her life. Family know that it's their job to do it, but they all went above and beyond. And I know some of the people we thank today are not here, but it's important that they are acknowledged in this place today. Grief is a journey, not always an easy journey. And when we think of Moureen, we remember that she lived her life well, even though the later weeks were not as she would have wanted. She would not want you to grieve for too long, but to remember there were so many beautiful moments in her life and in your lives as well. Relish them. There are so many things to remember. Thank you is such a small expression, but it is meant with the utmost sincerity. Lord Byron said, "Once you have loved, you will always love, for what's in your mind may escape, but what's in your heart will remain forever. There is no instinct like that of the heart." We're going to take a moment here, just a moment of reflection on the lady that we lay to rest. While you are reflecting, there's a lady called Annette Little who recorded a song, and we're going to play that. It's a special song, and Moureen appreciated her. So let's just sit a little and contemplate the life that we lay to rest at this moment. Thank you.
When life's journey's at its end and we need a helping friend, he'll be there in every prayer to understand. He will guide you by the hand to the rich and promised land. Then you'll climb the golden stair and he'll be there. He will guide you on your way above, and you will learn to love and understand him. Please do not be sad today. Wipe those tears, then smile and say, she's come here with love to share with me above. He will guide you on your way above, and you will learn to love and understand him. Please do not be sad today. Wipe those tears, then smile and say, she's come here with love to share with thee.
But definitely words well thought of. Please don't be sad today. We've come to the end of our service here in this lovely place. And before we leave, we're going to say the interment words as Moureen will take this journey alone, although she goes with the hearts and the love of so very many people. Death does not speak about itself. It does not say, fear me. It does not say, wonder at me. It does not say, understand me, but it says to us, think of life. Think of the privilege of life. Think how great a thing life may be made. Maureen's life, and you will remember it well, the character and the personality that you have committed to your memories today, but her body we are going to send to its natural end, to be returned to the great cycle of nature. Times of mourning remind us that there are some things that are worth mourning, because death, as nothing else, helps us realise what is ultimately valuable. And death also reminds us once again of the limitations of time, because God has left us with so much that is still ours when we lose someone that we love. The God that stands with us at this moment is the same God who was prepared to die in love for all humankind, a God that entered and has entered and will enter every struggle of our life with us, and a God who deeply understands the choices that we each make. Maureen's life was lived in its uniqueness with us and now has passed into the ultimate community of human existence. The gifts and the graces that she offered to each of us is never lost. The relationship now lies within your own lives and travels with you into your future. Perhaps it is time that we realised that there are some things that are just too beautiful to forget. I'm going to remind you to, if you will, to sign the memorial books that are at the desk at the front, if you haven't already done so. These are an important record to family of your wonderful presence here today. Maureen, your life is honoured. Your passing is accepted, albeit reluctantly. You will be missed by your family and friends, wherever they are in the world. George Washington once said, "All that I am, I owe to my mother. I attribute all my success in life to the moral, intellectual, and physical education I received from her." And we are reminded that the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world, and perhaps you, Moureen, knew that bringing your children up well would make the world a better place, as you have made this world a better place. The world is better for your life, and it's braver for your death. Maureen's life on this earth is over. She has left in the lives of all that she knew, all that farewell her, many memories, and she has left her wondrous mark on this world with the love that she has given and that has been received as well. Her talent shared, her gifts given freely to others. We know that death is the destiny of everyone, and we the living take this to heart. Here we release you, Moureen, to your eternal rest while we continue our own pilgrimage. Those whom you have loved and who love you will always be grateful for your love, your companionship, and your friendship. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take Moureen from the chapel to the skirl of the pipes. What else would we do this day but to finish with that marvellous, marvellous sound of the pipes? But before we do, and as we stand together, we will as a community say together the Lord's Prayer, and I rather like the old-fashioned one. So if you will stand, ladies and gentlemen, please, before we take Moureen out. And let's pray together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Please remain standing, everyone. Thank you.